This is a Nostrovini about one of the greatest boxers and one of the greatest heavyweights in American and international history. The great George Foreman's passing. He died, I'm not sure what, probably he was in 75, 76, and sometimes the heart gives out, and accumulation of old age and bad eating. He was a heavy eater at one point. I don't know. All I know is a hero of my childhood and my adulthood. Actually, the original George Foreman, the young George Foreman, was a bit of a bully and a menace, both to others and himself. He was also probably one of the strongest and powerful heavyweights in history. Uh, he took Joe Frazier and flew him up in the air. Now, this is a situation here. George Foreman, when he fought Joe Frazier, was basically he had a built-up record. Most of his opponents weren't developed. They were second raters, except for a few exceptions like Boom Corkman and George Chavallo. It would seem that his record was papered. That's why he was 3-1 underdog when in Jamaica. I think it was Jamaica. Yeah, as I recall in my childhood, I was a little kid at the time. He fought Joe Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Frazier was a tank with he was like a square brick wall. He had beaten Ali. He was almost considered probably one of the greatest heavyweights in history at that point. By beating Ali, one of the greatest heavyweights in history at that point. But George make him bounce around the ring and go yo-yo. Because George was the most powerful man. I probably whoever had the title. Fair none. He followed it up with a fight with Joe King Roman, which was another. And people started saying, "Hey, George, what are you doing here? You should be fighting Ken Norton, Jerry Quarry, Muhammad Ali." Well, George fought the conqueror of Ali, Ken Norton, and he bounced Ken Norton around the ring. Ken Norton came out with his cross-arm defense. He'd given Ali hell, and he was taken out in 2 rounds, destroyed by the great George Foreman. When the Ali fight was going to happen, everybody had written off Ali. Ali had slowed a little bit. He was still clever. He was still a good boxer. Probably the fastest man in the heavyweight division. But he was considered at the time long in the tooth. And he was 32, thereabouts. George was a lot younger. And everybody thought that George would destroy him in Zaire. But Ali was clever. George, he baited him. And George and Ali went to the ropes. And George went, hey, 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 I'm Big George. You can't do that. And he hit him so hard that he lifted Ali off the ground. Well, after 7 rounds in the hot Zaire sun, George he exhausted himself because he had never gone along boxing routes. Because he was so powerful, he would knock out people early. His stamina was questionable. He lost. Then he made a comeback, a pretty good comeback. He fought Jerron Lyle in one of the most masterful slugfests in history. Ron Lyle was a powerful heavyweight. They went at each other after George had lost the title. And if you watch it, it was a version of Hearns, a heavyweight version of Hearns against Mahagla, or Gotti against Ward. They went at each other. But George, he came off the canvas, showed his heart, and knocked the guy out. Well, George was beating a lot of guys and had another rematch with Joe Frazier. Joe had thought he had improved. And he did improve. He lasted 5 rounds. But maybe in his best showing, George Foreman showed a jab and boxing ability. And he methodically destroyed the great Joe Frazier once again. Well, looked like the title was going to happen. George had improved. Ali, watch out. But he said, I got one more thing. And Jimmy Young. Jimmy Young was the negative man. He had given Ali a real hard time, made him look like crap. But Jimmy was clever, and the Puerto Rican son was hot. San Juan, I think it was done. I'm not sure. Anyway, that was a long time ago, and the memory goes. Anyway, after 12 rounds, and he almost had Young out, he succumbed to his heat, and in frustration, he fell down. He lost the decision. Well, the heat will give you a prostration and also make you see God, and you come close to death. George, who always been a heavy duty, nasty guy, he got his lessons from personality from George Sonny Liston. All of a sudden, he changed. He went born again. He saw God. He found God. God found him. For 10 years, he did a priestly thing. But then his gym was running out of money. And George was inspired to come back at the age of 38 and had a comeback against some of the top heavyweights of his time. Another generation would displace Foreman. Guys like our Alex Stewart, Jerry Cooney. Jerry Cooney hit George Foreman one of the best stuff he ever threw and staggered Foreman. Foreman came back and knocked him out. Foreman fought Tommy Morrison, another big puncher of that time. Sharon Briggs, another big puncher, and beat them all. But Father Time and Speed caught up. He realized that he was losing a few steps, and he retired after some controversial wins over guys that maybe he should have won. I think, anyway, Morrison actually beat appointed uh, Foreman, but he ran, he boxed. He didn't go slugging with the big man. Foreman was a pussycat, and he became a great businessman, selling grills and being sweet, and being a very good commentator on HBO. A sweet guy who found God and God loved him. But time passes on and catches up to all of us. Now, Foreman had a lot of kids. Oh my goodness me. A lot of kids and a lot of love. Foreman's gone now. Gone to Valhalla. With the other greats like Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, and a multitude of others. Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson, he probably got into heaven, but he had to do a little parlays and in limbo for a little while. Because he was he was nasty at times to the women's. Anyway, there were those different times. People, oh my goodness, they went by the laws, and now everybody would be arrested, and there would be mass arrests of all the men's. Oh, anyway, that's all. That's all I got to say. George Foreman's gone, but he's not forgotten, and he's always going to be with us, in one way or the other. Anyway, I gotta sign off. Oh yeah, here we go. Goodbye. Let's end this thing. Goodbye, goodbye. East side, west side.